guy. And we want to union these two, right? Because this is separate from this. Right? So we want to put those together. So union, the top one. And we're going to get these guys together.
Union all of it, right? The circles inside.
A whole bit. Well, you should have subtracted the circles, the little guys. So they should be separate. So at this point, again, if you want to flip over to conceptual, you can kind of look at like where we're at. It should look something like that. Good?
Yeah, I see the hole. Well, I see the bottom holes.
So we're gonna put this cutout in here, and you know I think that the common misconception is that people feel like they have to draw that thing on top of this, but much like the last one, we're gonna do this on a separate piece, and we're gonna stick it in there. Okay. So I'm gonna slide this guy to the side. I would suggest you do the same. And I'm going to do another 2-inch circle, diameter, 2-inch circle here. And I'm going to make this guy. So this part, all of the information you need is right here. Okay. So they tell you that that gap, the total distance is 0.5. The distance from the center line is 0.25, right? So what I'm going to do is, because I know the distance from the center, I'm going to draw a line from quadrant to quadrant. I'm going to draw a center line. Does that make sense, I hope? And again, you could do this a variety of ways, but I think that that's the easiest. Same thing the other way. So I'm going to draw those two guys. So I get this kind of like plus sign looking deal.
Crossing it.
See that? See? Keep this bro. See that? It's horrible.
What?
Yeah. The view cube, it glitches out. So like when you click on it. Mine's really good right now. Actually malfunctioning. I'll do that. So once I have the center lines, I think that again I think the easiest way to do this, not the only way, is to use offset. So we haven't talked about that guy in a while, but offset is going to give you the ability to determine a distance from an existing line, right? So I'm going to go offset, it's going to ask me for the distance, and I know that I'm going each side of this guy 0.25, right? So my offset distance is going to be 0.25. And I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to ask me to select the objects that I'm going to offset. I'm going to offset that guy in this direction, and that same guy in that direction. So I should get something that looks like that. Right? So I have the original center line there, and I've just offset in each direction 0.25. Same process for the next one. So offset, I don't have to tell it a distance again, because I already did, so I'm just going to hit enter there. Going to use the default because I just did 0.25. And again, above and below. So I should get this guy, I hope. Did I lose anybody on that one?
No.
So at that point, I don't really need the center lines, so I can just delete those. And now it's a bit of a trim game. So this is kind of like, for those of you that are over 25 in here, you probably will remember negatives of photographs, not just the positive prints, but the negatives.
Oh yeah.
So we are going to be making the negative of this thing, right? We're going to take that space out. So I need to make the opposite of what I see here. So essentially it's going to look like a big plus sign, like a paddle fan, if you will. So the trimming starts to look kind of like this. I'm going to trim I don't need this part. Would you agree? Because I have material there, right? This thing right here. I don't need this part. I don't need this part. I don't need this part. And I don't need this part. You still with me? Okay? Again, I'm making the exact opposite of what I need. And here, I need all these little guys, these little tails. Because I offset this, they went past the circle just a little bit because of the curvature. So I just need to trim those guys up. And the last thing I need is just to take the middles out. So I'm going to take all of these ones where they just intersect out. So like I said, it's going to look like a big curvy plus sign. And then this, I'm going to poly edit the whole thing together. So if you've gotten this far and you're pretty confident in what you're doing, I'm going to PE that guy. Did I lose anybody with the trimming? Okay, so grab that guy, PE, join all those guys together. And I should have, I hope something looks kind of like that when you're done.
Got a question.
Yep.
I poly edited it, but it only took like the top part of it. I don't know how that happened. What's that?
Probably is a trimming issue.
It must be. I gotta double check. That's just weird.
Hang on, let me just finish this and I'll be over to look
Yeah.
at it. So this guy we're going to extrude now, right? I know that this whole plus sign, they tell me, is going to be 0.63, right? Again, we're making the negative there. So I'm just going to extrude this dude 0.63. I hope we got something like that.
There's something wrong there.
Remember mine was ass backwards. Oh,
It's back asswards.
yeah.
So I'm going to move this in. At this point, I need to move this into the middle of this guy, right? The cool part about doing it the way we did it is these guys, remember, are circular. So they actually still retain that center point, which is pretty huge. So I'm going to go 3D move, and again, depending on your orientation, this may look a little bit different for you. So I'm going to 3D move that guy. I'm just going to hover on the outside of this thing to get that center point right at the top. I want to grab this thing right at the top of that. And I'm going to move it over to be right at the top of my tower.
You want to turn ortho off, right?
Yeah. Work?
Something, it's a mess. A lot of lines inside.
Yeah, a lot. So here's how this is gonna go. We have this thing. I assume you said this has a lot of lines, but we're gonna subtract, right, from this thing. Enter this little plus sign we just made. Enter. And I hope that you notice yours looks